The rain came down in sheets as my taxi pulled up to the Riverside Hotel, the kind of boutique establishment that promised quiet luxury without the corporate sterility of chain properties. I had chosen it specifically for that reason. Anonymous, peaceful, a place where I could attend my conference and avoid any reminders of my previous life. 8 months. 8 months since I had signed the divorce papers with hands that shook so badly I could barely hold the pen. 8 months since I had walked away from Marco Castellano, from being his wife, from the impossible position of loving a man whose world I could no longer inhabit. 8 months of rebuilding, of therapy, of slowly learning to be Natalie Chen again instead of Natalie Castellano, of remembering who I was before I became the wife of a man whose business dealings kept me awake at night with terror. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk, thanked the driver, and dashed through the rain toward the hotel entrance. The lobby was elegant but understated, soft lighting, comfortable seating areas, the kind of place that felt more like a home than a hotel. I approached the front desk, already pulling out my ID and credit card, rehearsing the check-in script in my head. Conference attendee, 3 nights, quiet room please. The man behind the desk had his back to me, organizing something on the computer. Dark hair, broad shoulders, and a crisp white shirt and burgundy vest, the hotel's uniform. Good evening and welcome to the Riverside Hotel. He turned as he spoke, professional smile already in place. How may I help you this evening? Time stopped. The smile froze. His eyes, those impossibly dark eyes I had looked into for 6 years of marriage, widened with shock that mirrored my own. Marco Castellano, my ex-husband, former head of the Castellano crime family, the man who had controlled an empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, the man whose name made powerful people nervous, standing behind a hotel front desk, wearing a name tag that read, Marcus Rivers, looking at me like he had seen a ghost. Natalie. My name came out as barely a whisper. I could not speak, could not move, could not process what I was seeing. My mind rejected the image in front of me like a computer trying to process corrupted data. This was not possible. Marco did not work at hotels. Marco did not wear uniforms or name tags or smile at guests. Marco gave orders. Marco controlled territory. Marco was dangerous and powerful and always in control. He was not a front desk clerk named Marcus Rivers. I need to check in. The words came out mechanical. Reservation under Chen. Natalie Chen. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or recognition of how I had reclaimed my maiden name, erased his surname from my identity. Of course. His voice shifted into professional mode, but I heard the strain beneath it. Let me pull up your reservation. His fingers moved across the keyboard, and I noticed things I should not have been noticing. The way his hands that used to hold mine, now wore no rings. The way his shoulders, always tense with the weight of his responsibilities, seemed somehow lighter. The way his hair was slightly longer than he used to keep it, less severe, more human. I have you here for 3 nights. He kept his eyes on the screen. King room with a city view. Is that correct? Yes. My voice was steadier now. Shock giving way to confusion and anger. That is correct. Excellent. He pulled out a key card, began programming it. You are in room 412. Breakfast is served from 6:30 to 10:30 in the morning. The fitness center is open 24 hours. Is there anything specific you need during your stay? The professional script was surreal, like we were strangers, like we had not been married for 6 years, like I had not left him 8 months ago with a note that said I could not watch him die. What are you doing here? I demanded, abandoning any pretense of normalcy. At a hotel, working the front desk. What is this? Marcus, whoever he was now, glanced around the lobby. There were other guests in the seating areas, another employee visible in the back office. This is my job, he said quietly. I work here, have been for the past 4 months. Your job. I repeated the words, trying to make them make sense. You, Marco Castellano, work at a hotel front desk. Marcus Rivers, he corrected gently. That is my legal name now. Has been for 5 months. I stared at him. You changed your name, among other things. His eyes met mine, and I saw something I had never seen in them before. Humility. I know this must be shocking, confusing. I can explain, but not here, not now. Let me get you checked in, and perhaps later, if you are willing, we could talk. I do not want to talk to you. The lie came automatically. I came here to attend a conference. To work, not to deal with whatever this is. I understand. Marcus, handed me the key card and a small packet of hotel information. Your room is on the 4th floor. Elevators are to your left. If you need anything during your stay, please do not hesitate to call the front desk. The dismissal was professional and final. I took the key card, grabbed my suitcase, and walked toward the elevators without looking back. But I felt his eyes on me the entire way. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, my suitcase forgotten by the door, my mind racing. Marco Castellano was working at a hotel, had changed his name, was wearing a uniform and checking in guests and saying, "If you need anything," like he was nobody, like he had not been one of the most powerful and dangerous men on the East Coast. What had happened in 8 months? What could possibly have driven him from the heights of power to a front desk job? My phone buzzed. A text from my friend and colleague Jessica, who was also attending the conference. "Hey, just landed. See you at the opening reception at 7? I glanced at the clock. 6:15. I had 45 minutes to pull myself together, to bury the shock and confusion, to be professional Natalie who consulted on corporate security systems, not traumatized Natalie whose ex-husband was apparently living an entirely different life. I showered quickly, changed into business casual attire, applied makeup to hide the strain I could see in my face. By 6:50, I looked presentable, if not exactly calm. The reception was being held in the hotel's conference room. Of course it was, because apparently the universe had decided that I needed maximum exposure to my ex-husband's inexplicable new existence. I made my way downstairs, steeling myself. Marcus, would likely not be at the reception. Front desk staff did not typically attend guest events, but I was wrong. He was there, not as a guest, but as staff. He was one of several hotel employees circulating with trays of appetizers, offering drinks, ensuring the event ran smoothly. I watched from across the room as he moved with the same quiet competence he had always had, but something was different. He smiled at guests, made small talk, laughed at someone's joke. The ice I had always associated with him, the distance he kept between himself and the rest of the world, seemed to have thawed. "Natalie." Jessica appeared at my elbow. "You look like you have seen a ghost. Are you okay?" "I am fine." I grabbed a glass of wine from a passing tray, not Marco's, and took a large sip. "Just tired from travel." Jessica gave me a skeptical look but was distracted by another colleague. I used the interruption to slip toward the edge of the room, toward the windows that overlooked the city lights. "I did not expect you to come down." Marco's voice came from directly behind me. "I thought you might avoid hotel common areas entirely." I turned to face him. He held a tray of appetizers, still playing his role as hotel staff. "I'm here for work." I kept my voice low. "I am not going to hide in my room because my ex-husband decided to have some kind of identity crisis. Is that what you think this is?" His expression was unreadable. "An identity crisis? What else would you call it?" I gestured at his uniform, his name tag. "You were Marco Castellano. You ran an empire. And now you are Marcus Rivers, serving canapes at a corporate event. I call it change." Marco's voice was quiet but intense. Real, fundamental change. The kind that requires giving up everything you were to become someone different. People like you do not change. The bitterness in my voice was sharp. They just get better at hiding what they are. "Maybe you are right," he acknowledged. "Or maybe 8 months ago, I lost the only thing that mattered, and it forced me to examine what I had become, to decide whether I wanted to spend the rest of my life being that person. Do not." I cut him off. "Do not make this about me. Do not pretend you did any of this for me." I did not. Marco's honesty was stark. "I did it for myself, because you leaving made me realize I hated who I was, that I was living a life I never chose, playing a role I never wanted, and I had lost myself so completely, I did not even recognize it until you were gone." A guest approached, asking about dietary restrictions for the appetizers. Marco answered smoothly, professionally, then moved away to circulate with his tray. I stood there, wine glass clutched in my hand, trying to process what he had said, trying to reconcile the man serving appetizers with the man who had once controlled territory through fear and strategic violence. The reception ended at 8:30. I returned to my room, ordered room service, and tried to focus on the conference materials I needed to review. But my mind kept drifting back to the lobby, to the front desk, to Marco in his uniform, checking in guests like it was the most normal thing in the world. At 10 o'clock, my room phone rang. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "This is the front desk." Marco's voice was professional, but I heard the undercurrent. "I am calling to ensure your room is satisfactory, and you have everything you need for your stay." "The room is fine," I said tightly. "Was there something else?" A pause. "Yes. I am off shift in 30 minutes. There is a coffee shop next door that is open until midnight. If you wanted to talk, to understand what happened, I will be there. If not, I understand. But I think you deserve answers." He hung up before I could respond. I sat on the bed, staring at the phone. I should not go, should maintain distance, should protect the fragile peace I had built over 8 months of healing. But I needed to know, needed to understand what could transform Marco Castellano into Marcus Rivers. At 10:25, I found myself walking into the coffee shop next door. Marco was already there, seated at a corner table, wearing jeans and a dark sweater, his uniform exchanged for civilian clothes. He looked up as I entered, relief evident on his face. "Thank you for coming." He stood as I approached. "What can I get you?" "I can get my own coffee." I started toward the counter. "Please." His hand gestured to the chair. "Let me. It is one of the few things I can still do for you." The vulnerability in his voice stopped me. I sat. "Latte. No sugar." He ordered at the counter, returned with 2 drinks, settled into the chair across from me. For a moment, we just sat in silence, the late-night coffee shop quiet around us. "Tell me what happened," I finally said. "All of it. Starting with why you are working at a hotel under a fake name. Marcus Rivers is not fake." Marco took a sip of his coffee. "It is my legal name. I changed it 5 months ago after I left the family." "Left the family," I repeated. "You cannot just leave. You are right." His smile was bitter. "Normally you cannot. Normally leaving means death, but I found a way." For the next hour, Marco told me a story I could barely believe, about the 8 months since I had left, about how my departure had shattered something fundamental in him, about the realization that he had become someone he despised. He told me about the first month after I left, how he had tried to function normally, to continue running the family operations, how he had found himself unable to sleep, unable to focus, unable to care about territory disputes and profit margins, how he had looked at his life and realized he was 38 years old and had nothing real, no genuine connections, no purpose beyond maintaining power, no happiness, just the constant grind of staying on top. He told me about the decision he had made 6 months ago, to approach his underboss, his most trusted associate, and propose a transition, to sell his interests, to step away, to let someone else take over in exchange for his life and freedom. It took 3 months to negotiate. Marco's voice was tired. 3 months of convincing people that I was serious, that this was not a trick or a power play, that I genuinely wanted out. In the end, I sold everything, took a fraction of what it was worth in exchange for being allowed to walk away, changed my name, disappeared from that world entirely, and became a hotel front desk clerk. I could not keep the skepticism from my voice. Why? Why that specifically? Because I wanted something completely different. Marco's eyes met mine. I wanted a job where I helped people in small, normal ways, where the most stressful part of my day was dealing with an incorrect reservation or a broken shower, where I could go home at night without blood on my hands, literal or metaphorical. The hotel was hiring. The manager was willing to train someone without experience in hospitality, and it was as far from my old life as I could imagine. This is insane. I shook my head. You gave up an empire worth millions. Power, respect, fear. For minimum wage and angry customers, I gave up a life that was killing me, Marco corrected, for the chance to be someone different, someone who might be worthy of the woman I lost. Do not. I stood up abruptly. Do not make this about me, about us. We are divorced, Marco. That is done. Final. I know. He stayed seated looking up at me. I am not trying to win you back, Natalie. I am not doing this to prove something to you. I am doing it because you were right. The life I was living was unsustainable. And losing you was the wake-up call I needed to recognize that. I paced away from the table, then back. You expect me to believe that in 8 months you went from mob boss to hotel worker? That you just, decided to be a different person? I expect you to believe that I tried. Marco's voice was steady. I do not know if I succeeded. I do not know if the person I am becoming is any good. But I know I could not keep being who I was. If you have been enjoying this shocking revelation and want to find out if people can truly change, or if some pasts are too dark to escape, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I sat back down, my anger fading to exhaustion. Why here? Why this hotel specifically? You must have known there was a chance I would see you. I did not know. Marco's expression was earnest. I work here because it is close to the apartment I rent. I took this job 4 months ago. I had no idea you would be attending a conference here. This was pure coincidence. I studied his face, looking for the lie. I had learned to read him during our marriage, to see beneath the masks he wore. What I saw now was sincerity and fear. He was afraid I would reject what he was telling me. Prove it, I said finally. Prove you have really changed. How? I do not know. I wrapped my hands around my now cool latte. But words are cheap, Marco. You always knew how to say the right things. How do I know this is not just another manipulation? Another way to control a situation? You do not, he acknowledged. You have to decide whether to trust your instincts, whether what you see in front of you matches what you knew of me before. The man I knew would never work a service job, would never take orders from a hotel manager, would never let himself be in a position of less power. Exactly. Marco leaned forward. So either I am running an incredibly elaborate long con for unclear purposes, or I have genuinely changed. Which seems more likely? I do not know. The admission hurt. I do not know what to believe anymore. Then do not believe anything yet. Marco stood. You are here for 3 more days. Watch me. See how I work, how I interact with people, whether anything about this feels false, and then decide. Why does it matter what I think? I looked up at him. Why do you care if I believe you? Because your opinion is the only one that ever mattered. His voice was soft. Because you are the only person who ever saw me as more than the role I played. And because if I can convince you that I have changed, then maybe it is actually true. He left money on the table for both our coffees and walked out into the night. I sat alone in the coffee shop, my mind spinning with everything he had said. The next morning, I woke early and came down to the lobby before the conference started. Marco was behind the front desk, checking out an early departure guest. I watched from a distance as he processed the bill, smiled warmly, wished them a safe journey home. Throughout the day, between conference sessions, I found myself drifting to areas where I could observe him. The lobby, the breakfast room, the afternoon coffee service. Every interaction was professional, courteous, genuine. At one point, I saw him dealing with an angry guest whose room had not been cleaned properly. The old Marco would have had someone fired for the mistake, would have handled the situation with cold efficiency. This Marco apologized sincerely, offered a room upgrade and dinner vouchers, personally ensured the room was cleaned immediately, and managed to have the guest smiling by the end of the interaction. It was surreal, like watching someone wearing Marco's face, but operating on completely different software. That evening, after the conference sessions ended, I found him in the lobby again. He was training a new employee on the reservation system, patient and encouraging. When he finished, I approached the desk. Can we talk? After your shift? His surprise was evident. Of course. I am done at 8. Same coffee shop? I nodded and went to change out of my business clothes. This time when we met, I came armed with questions. Over coffee, I interrogated him about his new life. How much did he make? Barely enough to cover rent and expenses. Where did he live? A studio apartment in a building with thin walls and questionable plumbing. What did he do with his free time? Read. Went to therapy twice a week. Tried to figure out who Marcus Rivers was supposed to be. He answered everything honestly. Described the humility of asking for help, learning basic tasks. The frustration of being incompetent at something after years of always being the most knowledgeable person in the room. The strange freedom of not carrying the weight of other people's lives and deaths. He told me about the nightmares that still woke him up. About the people he had hurt in his previous life. About the guilt that therapy was helping him process, but not erase. He told me about the small joys he had discovered. The satisfaction of solving a guest's problem. The camaraderie of coworkers who knew him only as Marcus. The helpful guy from the front desk. The ability to walk down the street without constantly assessing for threats. You really did it. I said when he finished. You really walked away from everything. I did. Marco's expression was serious. And I will not pretend it has been easy, or that I do not sometimes miss the certainty of my old life, but I do not miss who I was. Do not miss the man who was so consumed by his role that he lost his wife because he could not see what he was doing to her. I was part of the problem too. The admission was hard. I knew what you were when I married you. Thought I could handle it. Thought love was enough. But I was naive. You were hopeful. Marco corrected gently. There is nothing wrong with hoping someone you love will choose you over their obligations. I failed you, Natalie. Failed us. And I take full responsibility for that. We sat in silence for a while. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Just us and one other customer absorbed in their laptop. I have therapy tomorrow afternoon, Marco said eventually. If you wanted to come, to meet my therapist, you could. He could tell you what we have been working on. Answer questions about whether the change is real or sustainable. You want me to come to your therapy session. I was startled. I want you to have evidence that is not just my word. Marco's vulnerability was complete. I am asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, people can change if they want it badly enough. And I wanted it. Wanted to be someone you could have been proud of, even if it is too late for us. What if it is not too late? The question came out before I could stop it. What if, hypothetically, I believed you have changed? What then? Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then I would ask if you wanted to have coffee again. Just coffee. As two people getting to know each other. Not as exes. Not with the baggage of our history. Just as Natalie and Marcus. Not Natalie and Marco. I noted. Natalie and Marcus. Marco died 8 months ago when you left. His voice was soft. Marcus is who I am trying to become, and he does not have the right to assume anything with you. Has to earn every moment, every conversation, every chance. I looked at this man who wore my ex-husband's face but claimed to be someone different, at the hope in his eyes tempered by realistic understanding that I might say no, at the humility that was so foreign to everything I had known about Marco Castellano. I am here for one more day, I said finally, tomorrow night, before I leave. If you want to have coffee then, I would be willing. The smile that broke across his face was brilliant and fragile. Thank you. That is more than I had any right to hope for. I went back to my room that night and called my therapist. I needed perspective, needed someone to help me understand if I was seeing real change or if I was being manipulated by someone who had always been skilled at reading people. My therapist listened as I explained the situation. Then she asked one question. When you look at him now, do you see the man who hurt you, or do you see someone different? I thought about it, really thought. Someone different, I admitted. But I am scared. That is just good acting. Trust your instincts. My therapist's voice was gentle. You left Marco because your instincts told you the situation was untenable. If your instincts now say he has changed, that deserves consideration. Just move slowly. Do not rush back into anything. Observe. Question. Protect yourself while allowing for possibility. The next day, I attended Marco's therapy session. His therapist, Dr. Rahman, was a calm woman in her 50s who treated me with professional courtesy but made no assumptions about my role in Marco's life. For 90 minutes, I sat and listened as Marco talked about his week, about the challenges of his job, about processing guilt from his past, about learning to build relationships that were not based on fear or obligation. Dr. Rahman asked probing questions, called him out when he deflected, pushed him to go deeper into uncomfortable emotions. And through it all, Marco was vulnerable and honest in ways I had never seen during our marriage. Afterward, Dr. Rahman asked if she could speak with me privately. Marco has been doing intensive work, she said once we were alone, unpacking trauma from his childhood, examining the beliefs that drove his behavior, learning to build a sense of self not tied to power or control. The change I have seen has been remarkable. But, I prompted, because I heard the unspoken caveat, but change is not linear. There will be setbacks. Moments when old patterns try to reassert themselves. The question is not whether he will struggle, but whether he has the tools and commitment to work through those struggles. Do you think he does? Dr. Rahman was quiet for a moment. I think he has the motivation. Whether that translates to long-term success will depend on choices he makes daily. But yes, I believe his transformation is genuine. He is doing the work. That night was my last night at the hotel. My flight left early the next morning. Marco and I met for coffee one final time. What happens now? He asked after we had settled in with our drinks. You go back to your life. I stay here. Do we stay in touch? Or was this closure? I do not know. The honest answer. 8 months ago, I left because I could not watch you die. Could not live with the constant fear. If you have really changed, if Marcus Rivers is genuinely different from Marco Castellano, then maybe. But I need time. I understand. Marco's acceptance was immediate. Take all the time you need. I will be here, working at the hotel, continuing therapy, becoming whoever I am supposed to be. And if you decide you want to try, as friends or something more, I will be ready. What if I decide I do not? I needed to know. What if I walk away permanently? Then I will be sad. Marco's honesty was painful. Will always wonder what might have been, but I will also understand. Will respect your choice, and will continue building this new life because it is the right thing for me, regardless of whether you are part of it. I pulled out my phone. Can I have your number? The new one. For Marcus Rivers? He recited it, and I saved it in my contacts under Marcus, not Marco. The distinction felt important. I might text, I said, might call, might need to ask questions or process, or just know how you are doing. I would like that. He smiled. Any contact from you is a gift I do not deserve but will treasure. We parted outside the coffee shop. No hug, no kiss. Just a simple goodbye and a promise to stay in touch, maybe. I took a taxi to the airport early the next morning, my mind full of the past 3 days, of everything I had seen and heard and felt. On the plane, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to the number saved under Marcus. Made it to the airport. Thank you for being honest with me, for letting me see who you are now. I do not know what this becomes, but but I am glad I stayed and listened. His response came quickly. Thank you for giving me the chance, for not running when you saw me, for believing that change is possible. Safe travels, Natalie. 3 months passed. I went back to my life in Seattle, my work consulting on corporate security, my carefully rebuilt routine. But I thought about Marco constantly. About Marcus. About the man who had given up an empire to work a hotel front desk. We texted occasionally. Nothing deep. Just small updates. How was your day? Dealt with a difficult guest, but it worked out. Read a good book. Started volunteering at a community center. The texts built slowly into phone calls. Once a week, then twice. Conversations about everything and nothing. He told me about his work, his therapy, his slowly expanding life. I told him about my projects, my own therapy, my healing process. 4 months after leaving the hotel, I had a conference in Portland, only 3 hours from where Marco was. I texted him, I am going to be in Portland next week. If you wanted to meet for dinner, I would be open to that. Just dinner, as friends. His response, I would love that. Thank you. We met at a quiet restaurant. Marco arrived in jeans and a sweater, still looking like Marcus Rivers, the hotel worker, not Marco Castellano, the crime boss. We sat across from each other and talked for 3 hours. The conversation flowed easily. We laughed, shared stories, connected as two people, not two exes carrying the weight of failed marriage. At the end of the night, as we stood outside the restaurant, Marcus, looked at me with tentative hope. Can I ask you something? And you can say no. Ask. Would you be willing to try this? Us, not as we were, as something new. Natalie and Marcus, two people who both made mistakes but are trying to be better, who could maybe build something healthier than what we had before. I looked at this man who had once been my husband, who had walked away from power to become someone I could maybe trust again, who had done 8 months of intensive work to become Marcus Rivers. I cannot promise it will work, I said finally. Cannot promise I will not get scared or run again. Cannot promise I have forgiven everything, or that I fully trust this yet. I am not asking for promises. Marcus's voice was gentle, just asking if you are willing to try, to see if two changed people could build something new. I thought about Dr. Rahman's words, about trusting my instincts, about allowing for possibility while protecting myself. Okay. The word felt like jumping off a cliff. Okay. We can try. Slowly. Carefully. With lots of therapy and communication and honesty. The smile that crossed his face was incandescent. Thank you. I will spend every day proving you made the right choice. Do not make promises you cannot keep. I warned. Just show up. Be honest. Keep doing the work. That is all I am asking. I can do that. Marcus pulled me into a hug, and I let him. Let myself be held. Let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, second chances were possible for people willing to do the work. If you enjoyed this journey of transformation and second chances, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to see how Natalie and Marcus navigate building something new from the ashes of what they lost. 1 year after our divorce, I stood in Marcus's small apartment for the first time. It was exactly as he had described. Modest, clean, nothing like the penthouse he had owned as Marco Castellano, but it was his, built with honest work, maintained with the salary he earned checking in hotel guests and solving problems and being helpful. He had cooked dinner, nothing fancy, pasta and salad and wine from the grocery store, not the $1,000 bottles he used to collect. We ate on his secondhand couch since his apartment was too small for a dining table, and it was perfect, real, human. You know what I realized? I said as we cleared dishes together in his tiny kitchen. The man I married would have never done this, would have never cooked, would have never been comfortable in a space this small. You are right. Marcus rinsed a plate. Marco Castellano needed the penthouse and the staff and the performance of wealth and power. Marcus Rivers is fine with this, happy with this actually. Who is more real? I asked. Marco or Marcus? He was quiet for a moment, considering. They are both real. Marcus is who I would have been if I had made different choices, if I had not followed my father into the family business. Marco was who I became when I let my circumstances define me. And now? Now I am trying to be Marcus, to make choices that align with who I want to be instead of who I was trained to be. It is hard, but it is honest. I stepped close to him, put my hand on his chest, felt his heartbeat. I am proud of you, for doing this, for choosing the hard path. He covered my hand with his. Thank you for giving me the chance to show you, for believing change is possible. We kissed then, soft, tentative, the kiss of two people learning each other again, finding new rhythms, building something that honored the past without being defined by it. That night, I stayed over. We held each other in his small bed, talking in the darkness about the future, about what we wanted to build, about how to make sure we did not repeat old mistakes. It will not be perfect. Marcus's voice was quiet. I will struggle sometimes. Old patterns will try to resurface. I will need you to call me on it. I will, I promised. And you need to do the same for me. Need to tell me when my fear is making me pull away unnecessarily, when I am protecting myself at the cost of connection. Deal. He kissed my forehead. We will figure it out together. 6 months later, I moved to his city, transferred my consulting business, found an apartment near his. We did not move in together immediately. We were taking things slowly, building trust, earning each moment. But we spent most nights together, cooked meals in his small kitchen or mine, watched movies on second-hand couches, went for walks, had coffee at the shop where we had first really talked. Marcus continued working at the hotel. I suggested he could do something else, use his intelligence and experience in business, but he liked the work, liked the simplicity, liked being someone who helped people in small ways. I am not in a hurry to be more, he explained. I spent 38 years climbing. Now I am fine staying in one place, being normal, having a life that does not require constant strategizing. We went to therapy together, worked through the trauma of our first marriage, built tools for communication, learned to recognize when we were slipping into old patterns. It was hard work. There were moments when I felt the old fear rising, when I saw something in Marcus that reminded me of Marco, and I wanted to run. But I stayed, talked through it, let him prove that the flicker of old pattern was not a return to old behavior. There were moments when Marcus struggled too, when the weight of his past pressed down, when he questioned if he deserved this second chance, when the guilt threatened to consume him. But he kept showing up, kept doing the work, kept choosing to be Marcus Rivers, instead of reverting to Marco Castellano. 2 years after I had walked into that hotel and found my ex-husband behind the front desk, Marcus and I got remarried. Small ceremony, just us and a handful of friends. No family from his old life, just the new people we had become. I took his new name this time, Natalie Rivers. A new identity for a new beginning. At the ceremony, Marcus spoke vows he had written. I promise to choose you every day, to show up honestly, to do the work of being a good partner even when it is hard. I promise to never let power or fear or obligation come before us. I promise to be worthy of your trust, your love, your belief in second chances. I promise to tell you when I am scared, to stay when my instincts say to run, to believe in your change while protecting myself wisely. I promise to build this life with you as true partners. I promise to honor the past without letting it define our future. We kissed as husband and wife for the second time, but this time was different. This time was built on truth instead of illusion, on work instead of assumption, on two people who had both changed in fundamental ways. That night, in the apartment we had finally moved into together, I looked at the man I had married twice and saw clearly who he was. Not Marco Castellano, the crime boss I had fled from, not even Marcus Rivers, the hotel worker who had impressed me with his transformation, just my husband. The man who had loved me enough to tear down everything he was and rebuild from the ground up. The man who showed me that change was possible if you wanted it badly enough and were willing to pay the cost. We did not have a perfect marriage. We struggled, fought, worked through difficulties, but we faced them together, as partners, as people committed to growth. And on the days when I wondered if I had made the right choice, I would remember the shock of walking into that hotel 8 months after our divorce. The impossibility of seeing Marco Castellano behind a front desk, wearing a name tag, checking in guests. That moment had changed everything, had shown me that people could transform, that the most powerful thing someone could do was choose to give up power for something real. 3 years after the hotel, Marcus still worked there, not because he had to. His investments from before, the legitimate ones, had grown substantially. He could have retired, but he liked the work, liked being Marcus Rivers, helpful front desk guy, liked the simplicity of a life built on small kindnesses instead of large gestures of power, and I loved him for it, loved the man he had chosen to become, loved the life we had built together, loved that second chances, when earned through real work, could be even better than first chances. One day, a guest at the hotel asked Marcus how long he had been working there. 5 years. Marcus smiled. And I have no plans to leave. This is exactly where I want to be. The guest looked confused. You seem overqualified. Like you could do more. I did more. Marcus's voice was gentle. It almost destroyed me. Now I am doing exactly enough, and it is perfect. After his shift, he came home to me, to the life we had built, to the proof that people could change if they wanted it badly enough. That night, as we cooked dinner together in our small kitchen, I thought about the journey we had taken, about how close we had come to losing each other forever, about the gift of that random hotel, that shocking encounter, that forced confrontation with change. "Thank you," I said suddenly. "For what?" Marcus looked up from chopping vegetables. "For becoming Marcus, for doing the work, for showing me that people can choose who they want to be instead of accepting who they were made to be. Thank you for believing in that possibility." Marcus set down the knife, pulled me close, for giving me the chance to prove it, for seeing Marcus instead of just Marco in disguise. We held each other in our small kitchen, two people who had found their way back together through the most unlikely path, through transformation and honesty, and the courage to choose change over comfort. 8 months after our divorce, I had entered a hotel. My ex-Mafia boss was at the front desk. It should have been the end of our story. Instead, it was the beginning of something better, something real, something built on who we chose to be rather than who we had been. And that, I thought as Marcus kissed me, was worth every terrifying moment of trust it had taken to get here. Sometimes the people we run from become the people we run toward, but only after they and we have done the work to become different. Only after we both chose growth over comfort. Only after we both proved that love, real love, requires more than feeling. It requires action, change, daily choice. And we chose each other, again, every day, in all the small moments that built a life. That was our story. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And real was everything.